All right, so let me first get to dear sister Emmeline, her question that she emailed. It's really great. All right, so she's talking about she wanted to hear a multidimensional take on autism, hypersensitivity, and neurodivergence. Is there such a thing as neurotypical? Is there actually such thing as a neurotypical human? And if one is truly in their, if they're truly in their authentic self. So is a neurotypical human considered that if they are truly in their authentic self? Now think about that part of the question. It's actually really, really, really significant. And of course, this Darling Starshine is brilliant and tuned in so many ways. And this is why I know that the depth of what she's trying to get to with that. First, I need to break this down a little bit. Autism is a spectrum. Hypersensitivity. There are many kinds of hypersensitivity. There's chemical hypersensitivities that often come with energetic hypersensitivities. There are EMF sensitivities. There's lots of different levels and kinds of hypersensitivities in this day and age for especially our youth. And then, of course, there's this idea of being neurodivergent. So I'm going to just break it down a little bit here. So I'll do the last first. Neurodivergent. What does that mean? Neurodivergent people are considered outside of the norm. They're outside of the norm in how they process sensory information, how they learn. Many neurodivergents have symptoms like ADD, are dyslexic, the kinds of things that we used to call learning disabilities when I was in school in the early 80s, 70s, early 80s. So there's many more definitions to neurodivergent, but just to paint the picture for you, we think differently. We're outside of the box. There's a really, really great movie series back in the day called Divergence. Okay, that was trying to outline the kinds of potentials a neurodivergent would bring into a society. And so that's like a dystopian movie you guys can check out. It's pretty good. I like the series. The whole series is really good. And then you have, all right, autism. Autism is a spectrum, and that spectrum is very, very wide. And you have your nonverbal autistics all the way to people who are mildly autistic, as in they don't pick up on certain social cues, which sometimes neurodivergent is in that category too. So there's a little bit overlapping in some of these spectrums here between neurodivergent and mildly autistic. There's also maybe some disconnect on some emotional, social processing. But in general, when people think about autistic, they think about the nonverbal or the extreme autistic, like that character that Dustin Hoffman played in Rain Man. That actually movie is what put autism on the map in then the collective awareness. And so he was completely dysfunctional as a human, but he was off the charts genius when it comes to numbers. And so, of course, his gambling brother takes him to a casino to count cards. So, just to, the kind of things that come with autism is that they may be deficient in certain levels of, say, their human nature, but that is kind of compensated with some other skill. There's also something that I discovered at the Psy Games that I talked about called the Telepathy Tapes, where I can't remember her name right now. She's an MD that did a deep dive study, and they discovered that a lot of these nonverbal autistics and people on the spectrum, like especially on the extreme end of the spectrum, are hyper psychic, are super, super psychic. And they demonstrated the psychic ability of with an autistic girl, where they showed the mother a question. The mother just read the question. She didn't say it out loud or anything. And then the girl spelt out the answer on a letterboard. Right. So and it was the right answer. It was like, there was no hesitation. It's like the kid knew the answer long before they sat down with the letterboard for her to pick out, to spell it out. So there's something called a documentary called the Telepathy Tapes, where she documents these abilities. And I haven't seen them myself, but I'm told by other people in the field, academics in the field of perceptual studies, that it's absolutely extraordinary work that she's done. So that's the autism part. hypersensitive can be a lot of things. That could be a result of abuse. That could be a result of not being in a safe place. That could be a result of chemical exposure. There's lots of things that play into that. So hypersensitives aren't necessarily born super sensitive, but they kind of develop that that way. Some I imagine are born sensitive, but many are sensitive by how they've been brought up from birth. Like maybe they had a food sensitivity and they were being fed formula and they were reacting to something like that. So when you have your body challenged like that at a young age, that develops sometimes allergies or sensitivities. When you're around like empaths, for example, really good tuned in empaths are very often cultivated by growing up in a dysfunctional / abusive household. Okay, so it's like, because their sensitivity was their survival mechanism, so they developed really they honed their empathic abilities to be very, very sharp, because they needed that in order to be able to keep themselves safe in those dysfunctional scenarios. So there's lots of reasons that humans develop into these labels that we're talking about. Okay. Now, it's not to say adversity is wrong or bad or anything like this. Actually, the past few days, I've been having this discussion with a couple friends that, growing up with no adversity is not a healthy thing for us. We as humans need to be challenged so we can stretch our limits of who we think we are, what we perceive ourselves to do. You know what I mean? We need adversity to experience it in order to discover ourselves in ways we don't already know. So adversity is actually an essential part of building inner strength, building character, building physical strength, mental strength, emotional strength, spiritual strength, right? So adversity is part of what it is to be in a biosuit in this realm. So just putting that into perspective of this whole thing. And I think when we're talking about a neurotypical person, they could be sensitive, they could be empathic, they could be, some of these on the spectrum of these things, but neurotypical, to the way I think she's implying it and the way I understand it. And these are terms that I haven't studied. These are terms I just pick up along the way. A lot of times my kids actually talk a lot about neurodivergence versus neurotypical. And they explain to me, I learn a lot from listening to what they have to say, because a lot of these terms, they didn't have them when I was younger. It's like, if you have ADD, that was a learning disability, and they categorize you like such, anyway. So in the meaning that I think is implied here about a neurotypical person, it's referring to a person that gets along fine within the confines of the program. Now, what do I mean by the program? Actually, when I say that, what do you guys think I mean when I talk about the program? Okay. So neurotypical, I'd really be, put that in the comments. I'm very curious what you guys have to say about that. And in the meantime, while you guys hopefully are putting your responses in there, I am going to read out dear sister Carol what she says. She says, my daughter was diagnosed with ADHD and learning disabled. She's highly psychic and intuitive. She can run circles around me. Yeah. So me growing up, I was also they said I was well, back in the day it was an ADHD, it was ADD, and that I was also dyslexic. And I think there's some other things in there too that they didn't have a label for. But what was interesting is that now, so all the school systems are different. Some are more accommodating than others. But when I lived in New England, in Connecticut, they accommodated that sort of thing. And what happened was I got to be in a one-on-one setting with a teacher, and I actually studied advanced grammar, advanced science, advanced math. I mean, I got to do all the advanced stuff because there was no curriculum that the teacher had to stick to. She just gave me, work to do and goal skills that I needed to check off that I had. And I went through the skills checklist very, very fast. And that's how we got to do the advanced stuff. So even though I was considered learning disabled, I was I was so lucky that I got to go into more advanced studies because I didn't have to conform to the collective program that was in the classroom. You see what I mean? So that is the kind of thing that it's in my mind when I talk about programming.